Hello. I've noticed a lot of people really struggle with making textures and cycled materials using Blender's Cycles render. So in this, I'm just going to show you how to go about that. First of all, we're going to add a cube. You might already have a cube. If you do, that's fine. What we're going to do is I'm going to do like a wooden, I guess a plank. So we're just going to make a plank shape here and make it a little bit thinner, brilliant. So that's all we're going to do for this. First of all, I'm going to click it, I'm going to do Control A to apply rotation and scale. That is important for texturing. Next up, we need to tell the textures where we want them to be. So if I go into my UV image editor and go into edit mode on this and then press U, unwrap, it just makes one big square because I've not told it how to unwrap. If I do it again and do Smart UV project, it creates this, which isn't that bad, but I think we can still be more efficient. What we're going to do, I'm going to switch to face select mode. I'm going to select this edge. I'm going to select this edge, and then I'm going to go to edge select mode, and I'm going to select one line connecting the two. This way, if I then go to shading UVs and click mark seam, now if I just go unwrap, select all, unwrap, there we go. So now I have, if I select the island select mode, I have this island, and this one. Put them back. See, that is now ideal. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to select these two, I'm going to move them here, I'm going to scale them up a bit. I want to keep them in proportion, so I don't want to do it, but I'm going to scale it up so I can get a nice texture on those. These, because I want to keep them in proportion, I can't make any bigger because all I would be doing is stretching the texture. Next up, now it's fully unwrapped, I can now go into the node editor. So you'll notice I'm already in Cycles render. I use it by default. For some of you might need to click up here and click change from Blender render or Blender game, depending on what you're using, to Cycles render. I don't have any materials here. As you can see, I have a truss one, but that's it. I can go new. I'm going to name this one wooden plank. Nice and simple. Next up, I'm going to go into material node, and you can see it's just white. And if I change this, it'll obviously change color, but I don't want that yet. I'm going to delete that shader, and I'm going to use the principled BSDF. If you're not on 2.79, you might not have this shader. I would recommend updating at least to 2.79. It might even be worth going to 2.8, but 2.8 isn't fully stable yet, so I would personally recommend 2.79. Now I've got my principled. I have my image texture that I've brought in. I need to choose a texture. I have a relatively large library of textures, which I'm going to use for this. But if you don't, that's perfectly fine. You can download textures from anywhere, it doesn't matter. I'm going to use, do I want that one? Yeah, I'm going to use this one. But now if I go on to my UV image editor, after connecting this, you'll notice that isn't quite what I want. So I'm going to go into my UV image editor, go into edit mode, I'm going to hide these for a second. Sorry, hide those two. Okay, that's just going to hide all of them. I'm not going to bother doing that then. But I'm going to flip it, first of all, on its side. And I'm going to move it up here. Next up, I obviously want these to encompass only one piece. So I'm going to move it along. I'm also going to go to options here and constrain to image bounds. Now it won't allow me to go outside of them. Okay, so I am actually going to scale it just until it's only meeting one singular piece. About there. Can be as finicky as you like here to make sure you get exactly the kind of look that you want. Gonna move it along. There we go. I want those black bits on the corner. So it just overlap on the corners. Perfect. And then we have our little board. But you'll notice very quickly that the ends don't look right at all. Because obviously currently the ends look like planks of their own. That's not what we want. Okay, first of all, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to mark all of these lines. Unwrap it again. I can select each line. So now I know this piece is that one. And I'm going to line them up just to get it nice and right for each one. You don't actually have to be as finicky as I am now being, but I want to make sure to show you how to do it properly. Next up, I'm going to do this one, which I believe is the front-facing one. It is. Turn off snap. Oh, it's already on. Let's turn off snap to pixels. So I'm gonna zoom in, get nice and close, and just edge it along a little bit. There you go. Because this way we have different looks on both sides as well. Next up, this one, which is the bottom piece. For this one, it actually doesn't matter as much because it's one long piece, but I'm going to make it roughly the same size so that it matches. And next up, this top one. Again, roughly the same size so it matches. Because another option would be to scale the texture up. But I don't like scaling textures up, personally. Now, I want the ends to look more like plank ends. So I'm going to take this piece and this piece. I'm going to add an extra texture over on this side. And call this plank end. And assign it. And I notice that those ends are white. So for the plank ends, I'm going to get rid of this diffuse. I'm going to shader, principled, connect that one up. Use a principled shader for basically everything. And then I will have a plank ends texture. And you can see these aren't quite what I want, but I can probably make it work. But I'm going to see if I have any other plank ends just to make sure. Nope, that's all I have. Okay, that's what we're taking then. So I want the color one. Connect it up. Back into UV image editor. What I'm actually going to do to make it slightly easier for me, add the plank ends on, and I get to pick which plank ends I want, and I can make sure that I meet them. It's this end and this one. So I'm actually going to use a different one than that other one because that other one is a little bit dark. So you have some plank ends that look like being sort of cut. We'll fix some of the edges in a minute as well. So first of all, we'll go to this wooden plank, and I'm going to duplicate this. Change it to non-color data. And I want the gloss now. So I'm going to take the gloss, and then the gloss goes into roughness. You won't see a difference really here. You will in the textured mode, but... And then again, this time I want the normal. This one you will see a difference, but it'll look a bit weird. It's just going to have sort of black dots on it. I think if it actually works, yes. Now to properly have a good look at this, let's go to rendered mode. As you can see, it does look like a plank, but then I can turn this up as high as I want, and it'll change. As you can see, it looks like the grooves in it are deeper, but I don't want it too deep. I'm actually going to use about, usually only, if I can go, only use about 0.6, and that should be nice. I'm going to jump down to plank end and do the same again here. So on the gloss goes into roughness, change the null color data, duplicate that one, I take the normal map, there we go. And you can see we've got sort of plank ends where it looks like they're being cut out of a tree, and we've got the actual plank. Next up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a multi-resolution. I'm going to hit subdivide a few times. Don't worry about this yet. So I'm going to go to the ends, selecting both ends, and then go into the end menu. I'm going to put the crease to about 0.9. And you notice that will fix some of the issues, but not all of it. And I'm going to go around the edges and also set those to about 0.9. That will fix the issues. I'm also going to hit smooth. You'll notice that we've got some solid creases. I might actually solidify these up a little bit here as well, but I think they're already quite solid, but I'm going to turn this particular bit up to 0.95, just so the corners are a little bit more cornery. Cool. Now we've got this multi-resolution, and I'm actually going to add a couple more lines to this. So what I want is about there, so it's roughly square. I think I might actually need to do a little bit more than that to make it do it, but I want these side pieces to be roughly, there we go, perfect, roughly square. I'm actually going to add more because I feel like making these top ones also square, which I believe is adding 4 into each one. So 4, 4. I want as many of these squares to be as square as I can make them. And then I'm going to do it on the side as well. There we go. I've got a very square shape. I can actually now put the mean crease to, oh, I don't need to do it on all of these, just the lines I already have. So if I can select them properly. I'm using Alt Select here to select whole lines. Very, very useful. There we go, so it's now saying 0.95. I think I can probably get rid of that completely. Nah, about 0.5. There we go. You'll also notice this has fixed up the issue that we had here, which is good because we don't want that. Brilliant. Now I'm going to go and select the end pieces. I'm going to add this into a vertex group. And I call these ends. And I'm going to assign. Then I'm going to press Ctrl-I. And now you notice I selected the other bit. I'm going to do the same again. And I call this just plank and assign. Now we've got them set up into separate vertex groups. I can go into displace, which is always lost to me. And it looks like a massive mess. But that is fine. I want a new texture. I know that it's this piece, and I want the displace. You'll notice it again, still looks a mess. That's because we're on local rather than UV. And now we have some plank looking stuff. I don't want it that strong because that was on very strong. I want it to be quite subtle. Maybe on 0.2. That looks about right. Maybe I'm going to add an extra subdivision in. There we go, there's some nice wood grain in there now. And I also want to set it to vertex group just plank, which will make some errors on there, but that's fine for now. Make sure I got it right. Yeah, see, I want to make sure I have this, and this, and I want them removed from plank. So now if I go select plank, it shouldn't have those selected. Good. Aha! So as you can see, the ends are now smooth again, and that's what we want. And I'm going to add a second displaced texture. We're doing the same again for this, but this time we only want it on the ends. Which, I mean, if you were looking for a dumbbell, there you go. But now I can cut this displaced texture. I want displace 001 because it's my second displace. And I want this one because this is where the plank ends are. And I don't actually have a displaced texture for these, so I can actually remove that. My bad. I'm going to just remove that. What I'm going to do then is I will actually remove the ends vertex group so that we've got a little bit of a displacement on the end as well. There we go. It doesn't actually look very nice, but I was hoping I'd have displaced textures for both. But now if we go into Reddit mode, you'll also notice the faces are jumped up to 378,000, but that's not an issue. And then we'll see what our plank looks like with all of our displacement. It's not a lot nicer. We've got a very realistic looking plank here. There's a bit of an error here. Oh, it's just a texture, that's not an issue. You can see we've got some bump in there. But without lighting, obviously it's still a bit messy. So what I'm going to do is add a plane. I'm actually going to bring this up rather than the plane. But just going to make a quick and easy light bounce. Just to have a look at our, get a nice angle. There we go. I'll just rest that on the floor. Let's put lights in. I'm afraid sorry, rather than using the inbuilt lights because they're not very good, I much prefer one that I have a little bit more control over. I can go for emission. Now let's have a look to see what this looks like. When it eventually renders. I'm not sure how that looks on your screen and have the light rendering in, but we've got a very realistic looking plank, but we're gonna move the light around a bit and see what we can get out of it. We can obviously use as many lights as we like, but what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have a light that comes off it, bounces that way, and then I'll duplicate it and apparently throw it all the way over here. I have a light that comes up bounces from behind. I want it just down about there. Show out the camera. Actually, I don't want this to show, so I'm going to change the settings to bounds, which hopefully will make the object not show up. Still showed up. There we go. So we've got a very nice looking plank that looks realistic. We can, if we wanted to, we could use this in a number of different ways. It takes a while to select it because I've got all my multi-resolution on, but if I turn that off, I could now, let's move it over to different one. I could, if I wish to, go array, set this one to 0 and this one to 1. Oh, wrong one. 1. I'm actually going to put up a little bit more than 1 to 1.01 just as a small gap. And I can get that. Then I could even go 1.01 here as bad. And there we go. I can increase the count and make walls to a building. And then this bit's going to probably kill my computer, but turn on the multi-resolution and we'll have a whole wall of 8 million faces. But we'll have a whole wall of planks, essentially, just all textured nicely. And that is, when it eventually loads, which might take a while, or my computer will just explode, but that is how you use cycles render in Blender. Thank you for watching, and I hope I was even moderately helpful. Have a good day.